me in dresses. It's weird. A weird sight. My mum always makes me birthday cakes, so that was one year, my Princess Castle birthday cake in a gold velvet dress. Fun fact, for a period of my life I had really short hair when I was about 3 because I used to hate having it brushed so much that my mum just cut it off to about the length it is now.
Foreshadowing.
I know. But that is like an autistic thing as well, that having hair brushed because of hypersensitivity to pain and stuff. So look, that's me and my dad.
Does your dad know about your transition?
No.
Describe yourself in 3 words.
Wait, you want me to incorporate that
Yeah, you
into...
can say like, I would describe myself as.
Okay. I would describe myself as... Ellen, describe me.
Too much pressure.
Creative.
Okay.
Oh yeah, creative, very amazing and clever.
Hardworking.
Creative, determined. We'll go with organised. I'm not organised, but like, sure.
Okay. Describe yourself in 3 words.
I would describe myself as determined, creative, and organised.
What are your passions and goals in life?
I really like languages. I'm trying to learn Japanese, which is a bit of a struggle. So I hope to do something with that, and I want to do linguistics at university because it really interests me. And I think actually being autistic is part of the reason why I'm so interested in languages, because I'm fascinated by how people communicate, especially because I struggle more with non-verbal communication and picking up on social cues and things like that.
Could you like go from the start? So when did you start your transition?
Well, I'd say around the end of year 8 was when I kind of started to understand about how I was feeling, and that's when I chose the name Noah, even though I didn't really understand why I wanted to be called Noah.
Yasmin, I'm just sneaking next door.
Okay.
I will be back. Keys.
Yeah, I didn't warn you that my mum like still calls me up. Oh. I kind of hid it for a while, and then I cut my hair off in year 9, and everyone decided that I was a lesbian, even though I never said that. I guess people think that girls with short hair must be lesbians. Oh, I did this one. This one is kind of gross, but I really liked it. So it's a painting that this artist did, who identifies as non-binary, where they used their period blood
That is nasty.
to paint on a moustache, which, yeah, is kind of gross, but I find it fascinating because it's playing with masculinity and femininity, which is fun. I finally told people towards the end of year 11. I told a few people before that, and I told the rest of the school towards the end of year 11, and my family, although my family still call me by my old name. I told my family when we all went round my aunt's house for dinner. I didn't tell my cousins, my aunts told my cousins, and I just told them that when I started 6th form I was going to be called Noah. My uncle's nearly 80, and when we were leaving he was crying and he called me Noah, which was very nice. So, yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about your transition, how people have responded?
Most people have responded really well. Some people at school don't really understand, so they kind of look at me, but I expected that. Teachers have been really supportive as well. Some of them make mistakes, but then they correct themselves, which is really sweet.
Has the school done anything specific to help with your transition?
Well, they told me to use the disabled toilet, and they've spoken to teachers. They told every teacher in the school, even teachers that I don't have and have never had, just in case they ever speak to me.
And where do you want to go with your transition?
I'd quite like hormone treatment, and I'm currently speaking to a doctor at the hospital, a surgeon, to do with top surgery. I had an appointment a few months ago, but they don't know if they're willing to do it before I'm 18, so
Why did you feel it was important to get tested for autism?
When I was about 9, I saw a documentary on autism and I was absolutely amazed because I thought it related to me really well and I related to all of the people in it. But at the end of the documentary, the lady presenting it said, "Oh, don't worry, we all have autistic symptoms, so if you're thinking this is like you, it's probably not, so don't worry, you're not autistic." So I thought, oh, well, that's that then. And then when I was about 10, I started at an art class and there were 2 autistic people there. We were there for 2 hours every Saturday, but even in those 2 hours I felt that I related more to them than I did to my friends at school. So I brought up the topic with my mum and she said, "No, you're not autistic, don't worry." And I think she was a bit scared about what it would mean to have an autistic child and to have a child labelled as autistic and disabled. And I started speaking to someone at school. I spoke to them about autism and they said that it might be. So then my mum went in and spoke to them and asked about all the consequences of being diagnosed and whether they thought I was autistic, and they said yes. So I went to the doctors and got them to refer me for a diagnosis, and I went to a hospital nearby. I had a really long assessment. It took probably half a day where I had to answer lots of questions and do lots of activities. And then a few months later, I got a really long document in the post saying that I was autistic and detailing all my symptoms, which was really fun. So yeah, that's how I was diagnosed, and I felt extremely happy afterwards, which is probably a strange thing to say when you're diagnosed with something like that, but it felt really freeing because I finally understood a lot of the reasons why I was different to a lot of people. I seem to find that because I'm autistic, some people doubt the ability to be trans, and whether you can understand yourself well enough to know that you're trans, which is a bit upsetting because I don't not know myself. Oh, this was about gender. This artist is a trans artist from America.
That's so good.
And I recreated one of her works. That's disgusting. I hate it. This I did with Copics, which was fun. There's a really high percentage of autistic people that are trans, or rather a high percentage of the trans community that are autistic. I think at the Tavistock Centre, which is the main gender clinic for children in London, a third of their patients are autistic, which is very high compared to the general population, and no one really knows why. So I know a lot of other autistic trans people, and it's interesting to see their point of view, because we have 2 characteristics that society sort of doesn't really understand very well. This is one of my favourite pictures of me ever, even though I'm clearly very feminine, but I don't know, I just look very happy. And this one too. I'm wearing gold bangles. I don't have some of the symptoms that people think that autistic people have to have. I have a lot of empathy for people, and people don't think that autistic people can be empathetic, which bothers me. And I think I'm better socially in some ways than most people think that autistic people can be. The common stereotype with autistic people is that they're hypersensitive to everything, but a lot of autistic people are actually hyposensitive, which is more how I am with some things. I sewed my hand.
I remember that.
Because I wanted to talk about how delicate human flesh is. I did it inspired by this artist. The school weren't great fans. With touch, I am definitely hyposensitive, which is why as a child people didn't really understand why I would try and hug and cling to adults really tightly, because I needed to feel them, because I couldn't feel them as well as most people could. And that's something that I still do today and I struggle with, because people don't like me in their personal space.
How can schools better accommodate trans students who do fall on the autistic spectrum?
Schools are really just starting to understand how to help trans students that aren't autistic, so we have a long way to come before we can understand both together. But I think that it's important to acknowledge that autistic people who are trans might have extra things to deal with than non-autistic trans people, which may mean that they might not follow what is seen to be as a stereotypical transition. For example, I know of some trans boys who they they can't bite their chest, or they like to wear skirts because of their hypersensitivity to materials and things on their body. So they can't, as a result of being autistic, so they can't wear more typically masculine clothes, which makes people believe that they aren't really trans because they wear feminine things, but really it's to do with autism. So I think maybe a greater awareness as to the effects of autism and how that might affect a transition would be helpful in schools. It's strange, see, I don't really notice it, but it's strange when people from school come home and my mum kind of doesn't remember, so then she calls me Yasmin, and then I'm like, oh, and then especially if it's people from school who didn't know me in previous school, because obviously they don't, whilst they know I'm trans, they don't know what my name was. So then my mum says, Yasmin, and then they're like, I know if I said to my mum, like, I really want you to call me Noah, she would. I just haven't really said that, because she kind of just went along with what the whole family was like, yeah, well, we'll call you Noah if you want us to, but make sure that's definitely what you want first. So I'm at school as Noah.